Recording in progress.
Just.
Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Keep Rice, the Honorable Carl Hanks. So, is anybody who should be heard on the agenda or in the debate? Okay, request this one. We're going to change up the agenda a little bit because I think, given that this is a public full session here, I think it would be a good idea for Jesse to go through the slideshow so we can have that part of the public notice. Mike, I think you and I talked about this, so I'd like to suggest before we go into the closed session, to really look at the competitive bargaining matters and at the contract itself. We become fully transparent, kind of talk a little bit about the slideshow. So one of the things we'd like to be able to do for the record is just let everybody know how we've gotten to this point. Some of you may know, I know Lisa, you were part of the process 2.5 years ago when past President Brunko called a special group together to get together to kind of plan how we were going to go through and look at and address the issues that were out there that came from the Policy Institute's request to look at how we're going to mitigate issues with EMS. At that time, we did form and we did have Cedarburg, Port Washington, Saukville, and Grafton fire departments at the table. We discussed going forward with this. Our illustrious chief put together many things and many options for that. We get to a point where Port Washington and Cedarburg decided to go their own way. As we started moving into this process, we found out that it would probably be a great idea to bring the townships in as full partners and have them be able to come up with a plan to be able to form our own fire district, so to speak, and form what we now refer to as Ozaki Central Fire Department. Took a lot of work. There have been some very good times with this. There have been some very harsh realities with it. And we did move forward with a referendum, which was approved by our the village of Grafton, also the town of Saukville, and also the town of Grafton to move forward on funding. That said, on or about April. In April, we decided to take a little bit of time off just to make sure that we had everything going on the referendum. And at that point in time, we decided to start forming the hard work, which is forming this agreement, which basically lays out how we're going to form this this intergovernmental agreement that we're going to move forward. Did I get it mostly right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Challenging summer as we went into this because there were some small things that our towns and villages did not necessarily see eye to eye on. We worked very hard with the chief elected officials and with our administrators to come to some agreements here. And while it's not perfect, it's a pretty good estimation of where we need to be here and a good start for Ozaki Central Fire District. With that, I turn it over to Jesse to go over a 5,000 foot look at what we are with the Ozaki Central Fire Department. Jesse.
Thank you very much, President Deloret. Excellent historical look back as to how we got here. Today, the village board is looking at and is slated to discuss and consider the intermunicipal agreement between the town of Saukville, town of Grafton, village of Saukville, and village of Grafton to form the Ozaki Central Fire Department and the initial operational necessities to move us forward. So as I mentioned, our community partners include the 2 villages and the 2 townships. As we went to referendum, this was the working organizational chart for the Ozaki Central Fire Department that will be formed with the adoption of an intermunicipal agreement. That said, it's obviously noted that there is a significant amount of full-time staff. However, the paid on call still plays a significant role in this new multi-jurisdictional department. The consolidation of the fire and EMS does come with a $5.3 million cost to it to be shared across the participating communities based upon a funding formula of 1/3 population, 1/3 equalized value, and 1/3 calls for service. That population and equalized value, those are items set by the state of Wisconsin, and the calls for service can be determined by utilization of records through Ozaki County Dispatch. So all tangible benchmarks for setting that formula. So benchmarks in this process of the creation of the Ozaki Central Fire Department, or OCFD. The Wisconsin, we really kicked off with a Wisconsin Policy Forum study that noted the advantages of fire and EMS consolidation throughout Ozaki County. By 18+ months of work by this ad hoc fire and EMS work group, which consisted of chief elected officials from each of the municipalities, as well as chairpersons of the respective public safety committees and appropriate staff. We created a model for a new department. We educated and engaged with the voting public and were successful in 3 referendums that were necessary to achieve the funding model to set forth the Ozaki Central Fire Department. As noted during those times, the village of Saukville did not require a referendum. Therefore, that was not a part of the discussion at that time. That said, moving my toolbar here. The intergovernmental agreement is to establish a fire board of directors and to begin formalizing the consolidation. That is where we are today. So as I mentioned, the cost share formula is going to be based upon a 3-year rolling average of those 3 benchmarks after the first year. The first year is the initial numbers utilized through the state of Wisconsin. After that, it will be a 3-year rolling average of the equalized value for each community as set by the Wisconsin Department of Revenue, the population as set by the Wisconsin Department of Administration, and then calls for service as based upon Ozaki County Dispatch records and logs. This is the generalized breakdown. This is still ongoing and being refined, but again, we are looking at about a $5.3 million consolidated fire department, and the cost share totals by community are broken down as such based upon that cost share formula. Again, these are still being refined, but those are very, very close to the numbers that we will be realizing. Overview of the intergovernmental agreement and its terms. There is representation of each of the member communities in that there is a board of directors that sets budget and is the policy body, very similar to a village board. However, this is specific to the OCFD. That said, the membership would consist of the Village of Grafton members, 3 of them, 2 Town of Grafton, 2 Town of Saukville, or Village of Saukville rather, and 1 Town of Saukville. With this nuanced agreement, the Village of Saukville does hold the quote-unquote tiebreaker. As you will note, that is an even number board. That came through negotiations within the work group as far as what would make sense for the communities that are being represented. The largest number of board directors is held by the Village of Grafton, as we are the largest stakeholder at this point. That said, it is important to call out that the number of members of both of the bodies, the Fire Commission and Fire Board, are to be reviewed in June of 2026 and every 2 years thereafter. And this is really a function of the fact that the cost sharing formula will change the allocations over time as the equalized value of a community grows or decreases, population grows or decreases, calls for service ebb and flow. That will impact the cost sharing of the department, and therefore the representation may need to be revisited. So this builds in a specific mechanism to address that concern. This was a significant topic of discussion amongst the work group, and this is where we landed as a compromise. That said, the Fire Commission is the hiring and disciplinary body, very similar to the village's Police and Fire Commission. However, this would be specific to the fire department. There's Village of Saukville membership, Town of Grafton membership, village and town as well. The terms of each of these bodies, the fire board members serve a minimum of a 2-year term, but at the discretion of the municipality. This was another significant topic of discussion amongst the work group, in that wanted to make sure there was a decent tenure or term associated with fire board members, because we wanted some continuity. We wanted to make sure there was the ability to build in some historical context for members. However, serving at the discretion of the municipality, in that if there is a fire board member who is unable to attend meetings, or frankly is not being constructive to the operations and policymaking of the OCFD, the fire board president may contact the chief elected of the respective municipality and ask for consideration of that membership. In accord with the agreement here this evening, the fire commission members would serve staggered 5-year terms. That being said, the village board may wish to consider adding language at the discretion of the municipality to fire commission membership as well. But that will be for our discussion a bit later, something I wanted to point out as part of my presentation right now.
One thing,
Yes, sir.
the Village of Saukville has 1 member, the Village of Grafton has 2 members. That was also part of the negotiation that took place, that is actually represented in the agreement.
Thank you. Correct. That was a late change with the negotiations and is reflected. I appreciate that call out. Thank you. Thank you. So continuing the overview of the agreement terms, it's really important to touch on the budgeting, the dollars and cents of the Ozaukee Central Fire Department. It is very important to note the fire board does not have any taxing authority. The fire board will review and recommend an operating and capital budget to each of the member municipalities based upon the cost share formula each year, and the member communities will review and either adopt, revise, or reject the annual budget and proposed capital expenditures. So a way to look at it, or a good analogy, might be similar to MATC, where the budget is set. However, it is the communities that pay into it, and there is some oversight there, or even maybe the local library, where the library board looks to adopt a budget. That budget is passed along to the member communities. The member communities have right to review and revise as needed. However, the library is a bit nuanced, as there are state statutory funding mechanisms with that. So analogies, not perfect matches, but to try to give an idea of the oversight there by the member communities of the budgetary requests made by the fire board on behalf of the OCFD. In accord with the agreement, the fire board may enter into small lines of credit, such as a Home Depot credit card, or a purchasing card, or smaller installment payments for smaller leased items. A good analogy there might be similar to how the police department leases their tasers, and there's a subscription fee or a lease payment or installment payment over years, and then they are turned in and renewed, similar to that. So the fire board would have the jurisdiction to do that. However, the fire board cannot borrow funds for capital expenditures or large lines of credit. They do not have that capacity. Any future debt shall be negotiated among member communities in good faith based upon a recommendation by the fire board, i.e. if we need a new ladder truck and we need to borrow funds for a new ladder truck, if the cash is not on hand, that will be brought forward as a recommendation and reviewed and approved by member communities, and then negotiated in good faith as to the specific funding mechanism or borrowing might occur. Again, the fire department itself, the fire board itself, cannot borrow funds. That is incumbent upon the member communities. The fire board shall submit a requested budget to the member communities no later than September 1st. That is following this initial budget, because we are right up on September 1st. That said, looking forward, all funding and expenditures authorized by member communities via the annual budget. Again, that gets into that financial oversight of not only the fire board, but also the member communities. If an annual budget cannot be agreed upon, then the previous year's budget is adopted. That way, there is no question as to whether or not the fire department would be funded. It's a matter of that is how that is rectified if an annual budget cannot be agreed upon amongst the member communities based upon fire board recommendation. The fire chief is responsible for the budget subject to the oversight by the fire board. Very similar to here in the village of Grafton, the fire chief is responsible for his department's budget subject to the village board and my oversight. In this case, the OCFD would be a quasi-independent entity, and therefore the fire chief is responsible, subject to oversight by the fire board. Continuing with the overview, getting into the larger ticket items, existing property, equipment, and supplies. Fire stations and the land they sit on would be leased from the community in which they are located to the OCFD for $1 per year. The community retains the ownership. However, the maintenance, utilities, and insurance are paid by the OCFD. Equipment and vehicles, however, would become the property of the Ozaukee Central Fire Department, except any equipment that has outstanding debt. The Village of Saukville currently has several pieces of equipment that have outstanding debt associated with them. Here in Grafton, we do not. All of our equipment is debt-free. Therefore, those would be transferred upon the creation of the department to the OCFD. With equipment with outstanding debt remains the property of the municipality. However, it would be leased for use by the OCFD for $1 a year. All equipment is to be maintained and insured by the fire department, whether it's being leased because of the outstanding debt mechanism, or if it is transferred over immediately due to the fact that is any equipment free and clear of debt. As I mentioned before, any future debt service related to facilities and or vehicles is to be negotiated in good faith among member communities, and that is very specific language set forth in the agreement. Membership of the Ozaukee Central Fire Department. Once we are up and running with these 4 initial communities and their membership, joining the department, there is a quote-unquote buy-in provision for new member community that would be based upon their reported assets and liabilities that they would bring to the new department. What assets and what liabilities would the OCFD incur with a new member? What would the costs be associated to serve the new community? Is there new equipment involved? How big of a service area is there? What are their calls for service? So that analysis would be carried out as well. There would also be a one-time non-refundable buy-in fee, in essence, a catch-up, if you will, because there's an ongoing financial commitment by the member communities. So there would be a little bit of a catch-up or a quote-unquote buy-in fee that would be negotiated with a community looking to come into and join the OCFD. And there would be a review and final recommendation by the fire board to the individual municipalities. So that being said, 2 years down the road, let's say the town of Port Washington wishes to join with the OCFD and become a part of our department. That said, all of that analysis would be carried out. There would be a recommendation by the fire board to each of the municipalities, being Town of Saukville, Town of Grafton, Village of Saukville, Village of Grafton, and there would be a vote by those municipalities as to whether or not to accept that new member. Conversely, there are terms set forth in the agreement with regards to exiting the department, whether it's one of our initial members or a new member that comes on and then wishes to transition. Regardless, you become part of the department. There is an initial 5-year term upon joining, and then there is a 3-year written notice of withdrawal that is required. There is no quick turnaround time with regards to any transition in membership. There is a commitment that is explicit in this agreement and is emphasized with the fact that there's an initial 5-year term. You join, you're in for 5 years minimum, and then there's a significant written notice that is required if a community wishes to withdraw.
To be
Again,
clear, Jesse, and for our friends from the Ozaki Press, we have had no contact from the town of Fort Washington to join our fire department. So it's strictly a what-if situation. It
Thank
would
you.
be the same for anybody who would wish to join the OCFD.
Thank you. Exactly. That was an illustration point only. There have been no conversations with any other communities other than the 4 membership communities that are noted. Oversight of the Ozaki Central Fire Department. What this intergovernmental agreement does, it will create a quasi-independent fire and EMS department. A board of directors and fire commission comprised of representation from each of the member communities will be the bodies that provide direct oversight of the fire department with regards to operations, budget, and personnel. The individual village or town boards do not provide that direct oversight. Rather, that is the board of directors and fire commission. However, the villages and towns, the member communities do retain the rights to review annual budget requests and capital borrowing proposals. Thus, there is a significant amount of financial oversight with regards to the village and town communities. That said, I just want to close out with a hearty thank you. The creation of this really could only be made possible through the efforts of the work group, the communities listed, the members from each of those communities, and that is how we are where we are today. I appreciate all the efforts of Chief Rice and his staff, village staff, township staff, and then the officials that served on the working group as well. All of this being said, because the agreement does carry terms and conditions that may be negotiated, the village board does reserve the right to hold a closed session, which is why it is noticed on the agenda, and in accord with state statutes. However, to be very clear to all present, any formal action on the agreement and or appointments are and must be handled in open session. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to provide this oversight and touch on how the agenda was formed for this evening. I'm happy to answer any initial questions. Otherwise, the village board can proceed as they see fit.
Thank you. And also I want a big thank you to Jesse, because Jesse was basically voluntold to put this together 18 months ago. Done a very nice job working with Chief Rice. Again, thank you to Chief Rice. And also done a wild wagon ride for you, and will continue to be, but nothing worth gain comes without a little bit of pain. So with that said, I want to make sure that we're going to go into closed session here. Is this a question? Closed session?
No.
Lisa? Okay. I recognize Lisa.
When did the agenda change that we were gonna have an open presentation? That's not posted on the agenda. And I know other citizens would have wanted to attend. There wasn't even an adjustment on them.
It's noted on the agenda that there would be discussion and possible action on the Ozaki Central Fire Department intermunicipal agreement. That agenda item was taken out of order prior to convening into closed session per just initial discussions that we felt it would be beneficial.
Yeah. Just so. The matters have been noticed. Public appeared, whether the slideshow was shown in public versus private, I think that only votes in favor of the bill.
I do want to make it clear that this board is that will operate with, certainly with consensus here to take action on any of the items that are proposed after closed session. We'll certainly discuss that in closed session if we want to move forward on this. Drafted reps to the HCFD or the Central Fire. That's certainly at the discretion of the board. I don't have any matter if we want to delay that. So with that, any further questions? Okay, I would like to have a motion and a second to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, 1E, competitive bargaining matters, Ozaki Central Fire Department, intermunicipal agreement.
I'll make a motion to convene in the closed session. I'll second.
Noted. Motion and second. Jessica, you have that?
Yeah.
This requires.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we will convene into closed session. Anticipate that to be
It is recording.
I'll move to come on. Closed session.
Second, so we did. Primary, secondary. Boards. They both boards for releases.
Yes.
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 Yeah. Yes.
Pursuant to business that was conducted in closed session. The request at the order of closed session is if this group is comfortable coming forward to adopt action items and to vote on action items. There are 3 action items here: discussion of a possible action on the OCFD, Ozaki Central Fire Department Intermunicipal Agreement, the appointment of 2 representatives to the Ozaki Central Fire Department Board, and third, the village Grafton representative to the Ozaki Central Fire District. We did ask the members of the board if all board members here will do it again. Lisa, are you okay with the board with this for in open session?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have, agreement to, that vote. First motion is to discussion. The first, action item is the entering into action, the intermunicipal agreement. As submitted here with edits, for the Ozaki Super Fire Department. I need a motion in a second.
I'll second.
For the motion, second, discussion was held here on open session, full session. Any further discussion here?
For point of clarification, the action on the Ozaki Central Fire Department intermunicipal agreement with the edits, as discussed and contingent upon approval of edits from other member communities, if presented.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, favor say. Congratulations, Chief Grafton, you got the fire department. Second will be appointment of recommended folks to be represented on the Ozaki Central Fire Board. I'd like to appoint 2 of the 3 at this point. The third one, I'm waiting for an application. I'll look from Andrew Schwartz on my left in the wonderfully Robin blue shirt, and also Mary Pat dressed in a very attractive black. Nothing meant by that. I'll look for a motion and second.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
We have a motion and second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That is all in favor, aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Finally, appointment of the Village of Grafton representatives to the Ozaki Central Fire District Department Fire Commission. That would be 2 members. I propose Paul Moroder, and I would propose Dan Ernst. Both are serving on other committees and have their applications on file. I need a motion and
I'll make the
second.
motion.
You, Lisa?
Second.
Second from trustee Miller. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Any other discussion here? Otherwise, we're going to go into adjournment. Need a motion in a second.
Motion adjourned.
I'll second.
Motion in second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are adjourned. And I will really enjoy reading the minutes.